Hey guys, Mo here, mechanic at Cycle Exchange. I'm back to give you a cool overview of some bikes that will be the predecessors to the models raced this year in the upcoming Milan-San Remo this weekend. All right, here we have a Marita Scultura 105 disc brake. This would have been previously ridden in the Milan-San Remo race last year and years prior. It's got a famous win attached to it from Marita Scultura. He famously rode down the Poggio descent with a dropper post. It's now outlawed, so you can't use a dropper post anymore to get more aerodynamic down on descents. But he picked this bike because, well, it's a lightweight bike, so great for the inclines. It's disc brake, so really confident braking on the descents. And his bike would have been spec'd with a higher end group set, so Shimano Dura Ace most likely. And that would have given him really crisp shifting, nice broad gear ranges, and a really, really positive ride feel. It's also in this generation of when bikes became kind of aero. So it's not an aero bike in the sense that it's chunky and deep in sections, but it's got aero influences on things like the head tube and the down tube and the fork to give it a small edge when you're climbing at the speeds that they do. They're going really fast, so they need all the benefits they can have. Famously, this bike came spec'd with just a round seat post, which is quite unusual for a bike that is so high end. Which is why it allowed Marita Scultura to fit a dropper. Now obviously we've got aero-shaped, D-shaped and aerofoil seat posts, which means that option is no longer available. Alright, so here we have a specialised S-Works SL6 Disc with Dura Ace and Raval Rapides. This would have been a very similar bike to what Julian Alaphilippe would have won the race on in 2019. It's a bit of an older generation in specialised lineup, considering we're now on the SL8. So this is 2 generations behind. It's relatively aero for its age, despite having external cables at the front end. This was back in the day when cables were still external for ease of maintenance, and simply it wasn't really discovered that things could be integrated so neatly like the modern SL8, for example. Currently, Remco Evenepoel and his other guys on his team will be riding this bike to success, hopefully, and they'll be riding the SL8 currently, and that's still going to be with Dura Ace and disc, with some other finishing kit alongside, but it's a far more aerodynamic frame while still being quite light, so they're going to find great success hopefully. So in 2017, Peter Sagan, who was then a world champion for Bora Hansgrohe, rode this bike in Milan-San Remo. He unfortunately came second, but it goes to show you how successful this bike is. Despite it not winning that particular race, the fact that it was on the podium speaks for its fantastic racecraft and raceability. So to wrap things up, we've got this BMC Ultra XR4. This is the disc variant, but a few years back in 2020, this would have been a bike that would have won in the rim brake variant at Milan-San Remo. It was won by Wout van Aert, and he put on a good effort then. It's mostly due to the fact that it was quite an aero frame and still quite light for its aero capabilities. And it was spec'd with a very good group set. So in this case, it would have been the same Dura Ace 11 speed on this bike with very similar wheels. Currently, Wout van Aert is on the Visma Lisa bike, so he's switched teams and switched bike brand as well. So he's now on a Cervelo S5. They may switch to the R5 depending on how the stage goes. So we'll see how that unfolds, of course. But nevertheless, the S5 is a worthy successor to the Ultra XR4, showing far more modern aero and understanding of how aero works in a bunch as well, because aerodynamics in a bunch is always going to be a tricky one to work out when you've got air coming from all different sides. So the model that would have been raced back then would have been the rim brake. Obviously this is the disc brake like I mentioned earlier, but the reason why this is such a lovely spec bike is, one, because of the sloping top tube. It's got a really nice subtle curve to it, which was a Bianchi feature back in its day. It still sort of is with the new Bianchi Ultra RC, which is the current spec model of 2025 and onwards. But these bikes are really famous for their Celeste color. So it's this fantastic mint, I guess is the best way to put it, mint colorway with the black, and it's all covered in a really fantastic gloss clear coat. And you just notice it from anything in the crowd. It's just a really recognizable color. So that's a little wrap up on a little showcase of 3 different bikes that could potentially be raced in their newer successful models this year in the Milan-San Remo. I suggest you watch it because it should be a hitter. It should be on this weekend on Sunday. Get to it.